Is it bad to be non-attached to our partner, children, parents, friends? For most people unaware of this concept, at first it may sound like a highly bad and unhealthy thing. So let's discuss this further. I've been studying the Bhagavad Gita before making this video, in order to come up with what I think would be at least one answer to the main questions. Why should we give up attachments? Is it bad to be non-attached? Is it crazy to live with this attitude? I mean, some people might even think that that's the case. And it's not even that strange if you don't really understand the idea behind it at first glance. So let's go over this together and see what we can learn. Let's turn to the Gita, and then in self-realization all over again, they said, "Seek refuge in the attitude of detachment, and you will amass the wealth of spiritual wisdom and awareness. Those who are motivated only by desire for the fruits of action are miserable, for they are constantly anxious about the results of what they do. When consciousness is unified, however, all vain anxiety is left behind. There is no cause for worry, whether things go well or ill. Therefore, devote yourself to the disciplines of yoga, for yoga is skill in action. The wise unify their consciousness and abandon attachment to the fruits of action, which binds a person to continual rebirth. Thus they attain a state beyond all evil. When your mind has overcome the confusion of duality, you will attain the state of holy indifference to things you hear and things you have heard. When you are unmoved by the confusion of ideas and your mind is completely united in deep samadhi, you will attain the state of perfect yoga." So what it's saying here is that we have to control our minds. That's what yoga is all about. We can consciously decide not to let ourselves get caught up in the attitude of attachment to things having to be a certain way in order for us to be happy. We have to realize that we can keep our minds at peace in a state of holy indifference to everything, so that we can always experience peace and bliss throughout this physical journey of ours. Most people get so caught up in the way things are, they suffer from great anxiety and other negative states of mind, because they allow the things of this world to determine how they will feel about something. That can be overcome if we cultivate the attitude of detachment with anything we may face and do, physically speaking. At first, this attitude feels very strange and unfamiliar. We are so used to judging things either good or bad, but in letting go of these human tendencies, we find space for higher, more divine tendencies to flow through our consciousness. Keep practicing this attitude for yourself and watch what happens to your overall inner well-being. You will start to feel better and better, and it just keeps on magnifying as long as this attitude becomes your way of living. As the Gita said, if you constantly pay attention to what you are getting in return for what you are doing, anxiety follows you around everywhere you go. Likewise, if you are constantly attaching yourself to painful things or pleasurable things, you will also feel a constant anxiety and form of suffering. For the pleasurable will always come to an end sooner or later, and the painful simply makes us feel more and more out of balance within ourselves. Let life flow with and through you without attachments for anything or anyone of any kind, and you will truly feel at peace and alive. It is not bad to be non-attached, for in that attitude you discover the freedom of no longer being pulled between dualities of good or bad. It is crazy to live with this attitude? Some might wonder. Well, it might seem crazy at first, for it goes against our core human tendencies of being attached and wanting to judge things all the time. But the more you let go of these lower human tendencies, the more higher divine ones can take place instead. Now let us consider the following. A man is highly passionate about watching a particular TV show. Every time the show is on, he feels excited and can't wait to see what will be in store in the upcoming episode. Months go by and the show keeps on expanding. Then one day the production crew needs to take a break to create the next season for his favorite show. Now for a few months he won't be able to watch what will happen next. He has to wait and wait. His mind starts to wander and speculate. How will the story progress? As time goes by, the next season launches and he is just as excited as before. But this time, as the season progresses, he feels less happy about it. The story isn't going in the direction he hoped it would go. Things happen he doesn't like, and so now he starts to feel bad about the show entirely and stops watching. It is in the moment he felt good or bad about the show he was experiencing a form of attachment to that particular event. Now, if he were to be non-attached, he would neither be excited nor feel bad about whatever happens in the show. He simply lets it be what it was meant to be by its creators. That is the attitude of non-attachment. The world is as it is because God has created it so, but then we get attached to the good and the bad. It is easy to recognize when we are attached to the good, but it's harder to recognize we are also attached to the bad. When we obsess about the negative, that too is a form of attachment. Had we been non-attached, we wouldn't let either the good or bad swing us all over the place emotionally and mentally. That is where the wisdom of non-attached living comes into view, to reach that state of being. Just like the man in his TV show, it expands and changes around. So your physical life expands and always changes around. Always there are moments you can recall that felt great and moments that felt really bad. But rarely is there a person who can keep the peace of God active within himself throughout either good or bad experiences. The person who doesn't latch onto the good or onto the bad, physically speaking, is truly free from attachments while moving through his life. This is one of those ultimate goals to realize. If this attitude becomes your habitual way of living, a weight falls off your shoulders, for you no longer let the concepts of good or bad drag you all over the place. In reality, everything just is, but our mind has a tendency to magnify either the good or the bad in what we perceive. But nothing is either good nor bad except our thinking makes it so. Therefore, if you learn to calm your mind and let go of your attachments, you will be free. To be attached to something that brings pleasure will ultimately bring sorrow, for the pleasurable thing or person in question will change over time and vanish from your physical life. To be attached to something you are upset about, someone has done you wrong, whatever it is, that too causes you to suffer more and more as time goes on. At first it might feel great to act on revengeful thoughts and ideas, but ultimately it causes suffering, for the emotions of hate and anger reside within you and are burning you from the inside. I suggest therefore that one should discover that joy can arise within your mind without the need for anything to be physically in a certain way. If you can but grasp this one fact, then you will know how to be detached from physicality and it no longer drags you all over the place. One who is stable in his mind and knows how to feel joyful regardless of their physical circumstances knows joy indeed, for it is no longer dependent on things being in a particular way. And you know something? That path is open to you. That is the beauty of non-attached living. So, when you look at your own life, of course you feel attached to your friends, family, your partner, your children. All these attachments at first are of course not bad, so don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that this is completely wrong of you to be attached to any of them. What we're saying here though is to understand that you, they, everyone is God's manifestation. And therefore the attachment itself isn't even truly needed, even though you have it. But what we're getting at here is that if you are attached to someone or something, always when it leaves you or when there's potentially conflict with the thing or person in question, we might get upset. It always upsets us in some way, and therefore we start suffering. But if we can let go of the attachment in the sense of we own something or they belong to us, and we start seeing everything as the manifestation of God itself, then we know that we don't really need to be attached that intensely or to get upset over potential conflicts that arise when they are acting in a way we don't agree with, for example, with other people. None of that is needed, because it's all a form of attachment. You want them to be in a certain way. Let them be themselves, and you be yourself. And the only goal to life is to realize the unity you share with all of creation. Remember this, and as you understand that unity, you will automatically learn to become non-attached and let everything flow freely and be what it was meant to be, without us trying to interfere with it all the time. Of course, in the ignorance of humanity, they like to do negative, destructive things. But once humanity starts to see the unity, they will stop doing it, because they can't help themselves. Once you perceive the unity, there's no longer any logic in destructive activities. That is actually the beauty, and also the difficulty for us, is that we have to first find it for ourselves individually, and then we can only hope for the best when it comes down to other people. We can only try to be an example for them that this state of mind and of living actually is possible to be achieved, to be realized. They will become aware of it through our behavior and attitudes in life, and maybe they start seeking it as well. But practice the attitude of non-attached living, and you will discover that you can be full of joy, because it no longer depends on anything in your physical life. That's what I want you to get out of this message, and that's what I would want you to get out of this idea of why it is useful and actually powerful to let go of your attachments altogether. Learn to enjoy things as they come and go in your physical life. People, things come and go. Simply learn to enjoy it, but don't try to hold on to it, because that's not how the physical world works. It always comes to an end for all of us. So if we keep that inner balance and unity with God, with this greater awareness that this is in fact a journey that we're on, a process of spiritual and mental evolution for us individually to understand the unity, the divineness of God's creations, well, then we'll be able to simply enjoy it without being attached in that old manner that we used to be. And then out of that non-attached living will come the true joy, the joy of the soul, the eternal abiding joy that no longer depends on anything outside of itself.